And welcome back, Rio Grande Guardian viewers. Great to have you back again. This one's rather special for me. I've been wanting to do this podcast for quite some time, and I'm very pleased to say that our guest today is William Steele. William.
Hey, good to see you, Steve.
Good to see you again. And for the viewers that are not aware, William is an entrepreneur and the co-owner of Supply Pay. We're going to learn all about that tonight. But I've got to start with one of the most important questions, which is, how is your good friend Richard Branson?
He's doing good. Hopefully practicing up his chess skills.
He needs to.
That's right.
Okay, so we have to now tell the viewers of your connection to Richard.
So,
not that I know him, I'm calling him by his first name. He's from the motherland, but other than that, I probably bought some of the very earliest records he ever put out back in the day. But no, tell us about Mr. Branson.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, he's quite the legendary entrepreneur. I grew up as a kid watching a lot of his crazy challenges, and my mom would always say like, "Oh, look at what Richard Branson's doing today." He would come on the news a lot, especially when cable television and news networks were very much like a consistent household presence. So I had the opportunity to meet Richard at his home on Necker Island, which is in the British Virgin Islands, and kind of learn in more detail what led up to the sequence of events of him not only acquiring that land, but also building the businesses he built, and did a little bit more studying. I was able to be invited there by a group called the Principled Business Movement. And so it's a nonprofit organization, and I participated in one of their accelerator programs, which is basically just a program for entrepreneurs building technology companies or venture scaled companies. And through that, we were selected as one of the higher performing companies in the cohort. And the result was that you get essentially invited to go and stay on Necker Island for a week and network with some of the most interesting entrepreneurs I've had the chance to meet to date. And one of those was, of course, Sir Richard Branson. And I got the pleasure of challenging him to a chess match. And
he wasn't happy.
He's very clearly a competitive person, that's for sure. And it was inspiring to meet him and to learn how he holds space and how he connects with others. And he's truly just a very giving person at heart. Everyone there was incredible. I got to meet the founder of Whole Foods, John Mackey. He's also an incredible entrepreneur, very much a conscious capitalist is also the name of the movement. And there were so many others. I mean, I could list them on and on and on. There were just so many incredible people there, and I'm really thankful and grateful to the Principled Business organization, as well as, of course, to Richard Branson for hosting us there. But there's a little bit of a backstory on how I ended up there and
sure,
playing chess with him.
Well, we'll do that, in a future episode. So before we really get into discussion of Supply Pay, what it is, how it works, why you're doing it, we're going to jump around a bit first. And so my next question is Stanford University.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So yeah, recently my co-founder Jorge Ayala and I have had the pleasure of attending what is known as the Latino Business Action Network program at the Stanford Graduate School of Business. And it's quite interesting. It's a program for Latino entrepreneurs and founders building businesses in all kinds of places and in all parts of the world. I've had the pleasure of meeting, again, some really incredible entrepreneurs through that program. And yeah, so it was my first time at the Stanford campus. It's a beautiful campus. I think their annual donations is somewhat in the realm of $1 billion or something like that. So you could imagine every blade of grass, every tree is just so well manicured. And there's a lot of history there. Some of the most incredible technology builders have walked through those halls and been through those programs. So even one of our professors, I gotta give him a shout out, Professor Huggy, he has a really great book called Scaling Up, and it's basically how to get excellence without sacrificing speed. And so I've learned a ton through that program, and I'm very thankful again to another organization, LBAN, the Latino Business Action Network. If you're interested, you should apply. It's for anybody that's has like Hispanic heritage. They can apply to the program and be approved upon their application meeting the criteria. But it's a great way to meet other founders, and it's a great way to learn. I've learned a ton, both from Professor Huggy and his anecdotal stories with the CTO of Uber, the founder of Athena. I mean, these are like massive billion-dollar companies, and he had the pleasure of learning from and also teaching some of these incredible entrepreneurs and passing those lessons on to us.
It's quite possible that the viewers here, and obviously our market in the main is the Rio Grande Valley, that many of the viewers will just be amazed at the people that you can rub shoulders with. So obviously you're very fortunate, but you've got something about you. With Jorge, you've got something special happening. So tell us, we've mentioned him twice, how did you first meet Jorge, and how did you come to collaborate?
Yeah, this is such a fun story. So I was going through the Startup Texas Accelerator program in Brownsville. And for those who don't know, the Brownsville Community Improvement Corporation and UTRGV, they have a program that they work together with, and they put together an accelerator program for basically emerging technologies and companies that are trying to build in the emerging technology space. And at the time, I was building more of a government platform for residents. I was working in kind of the GovTech space, and I was pitching an idea. Unfortunately, it was not a solid business model. I was a bit too...
We did a story on it, but that didn't help.
It helped, but it wasn't the right timing, I think, for that particular idea. And I learned a ton through that experience. And of course, even presenting and pivoting leading up to that Startup Texas pitch competition was such a high intensity learning experience. And the morning after, I'm kind of licking wounds, and my wife is also an incredible entrepreneur. She's the founder with my mother-in-law, Holly, of Lea House. It's a Vietnamese kitchen in Weslaco. The next day, I'm kind of licking my wounds, serving bowls, watching hangry families come in and then turn into super happy families. It's a very rewarding experience. And in walks Miss Persephone from the Center of Innovation and Commercialization. She works over in the Weslaco CIC. And she had come across the person who would become my co-founder, Jorge. And she came across his MBA program, kind of capstone project, which was Veggie Ventures at the time. And Jorge comes from an extensive background in cross-border produce trade. He's a certified accountant in Mexico. He was born in Guanajuato. He spent many years in the produce industry there, working for a large co-op of basically packing and selling tomatoes to the United States. Then he came to the U.S. to become the CFO of a fresh produce importing company based in McAllen. And he had been in his MBA program basically trying to solve a problem he felt himself as an operator. We'll jump into that problem in a second, but in that process of building that business plan and doing all that research, Miss Persephone saw something in him, and she saw something at that pitch competition. Again, a lot of luck in many different times have happened on multiple occasions. And the next day she felt an urge to say, Jorge, you have to come and meet William. You guys need to hang out. She kind of essentially said, you need to build this thing. And I was so convinced that I needed to keep building what I was building. But the more and more I heard Jorge talk, I realized he knows a lot about his industry, and he's very, very respectful and very mannerful. And fortunately, I'm in the position in life now where I get to really be choosy about who I want to do business with. My wife set such a high standard for business partners that it can be difficult to find good ones, but Jorge really stood head and shoulders above the rest, and we kind of teamed up after that meal and never looked back.
The rest is history. So the CIC, your colleague over there in Weslaco, does she get a finder's fee for matching you up? When you get to that
that's
incredible level you're going to get to?
I'm sure in the future we definitely owe Miss Persephone a few Christmas presents.
There we go. Okay, so very soon we're going to get onto the complicated stuff where I'll really have to work hard to concentrate and follow you. But before we do that, very recently you won a big award in Austin. So tell us about that one.
Yes. We were fortunate enough to be selected as the favorite startup in Texas at the Texas Venture Gala and Forum. So for those who aren't familiar, the Texas Venture Gala Forum is kind of like the premier event of the year in the Capitol that hosts some of the best investors in the state, some of the best ecosystem builders. I mean, just like a lot of really incredibly high-performing people are there from all sides of the table. And you have a handful of founders sprinkled in there, but really you have a lot of these incredible ecosystem builders from Houston, from Brownsville, from McAllen, from El Paso, from Dallas, I mean, from all over the state. And they come and, Senator Ted Cruz was there. The president was, in his cabinet, was thoughtful enough to send a letter live to the event that Mr. Glenn Hammer from the Texas Association of Businesses was able to read off to everyone. It was quite a fun, very interesting event. I was able to, again, learn from so many incredible people. And
an incredible honor then to win statewide.
Yeah.
As one of the businesses to watch and the businesses that deserve support.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were selected for that. So that was it. That was fun. It was interesting.
Yeah, incredible. Okay, so now what I think is the hard part, not for you because you know it backwards and forwards, but tell us a little bit about supply pay. How does it work? Jorge comes to you and says there's a problem, a supply chain problem, and can you help us fix it? And you're trying to help the growers. This is my understanding. Initially, you were trying to help the growers in Mexico have a streamlined process so they can get their goods delivered to H-E-B and Walmart, etc., Kroger. And you could see the bottleneck between the two of you, and you got to work. You got your heads down for many weeks to try to solve a problem.
Exactly. So the main problem point that we started solving at the company from day one is a problem known as long or unstable cash flow conversion cycles. And so a cash flow conversion cycle is a concept of when a business books a sale, they book a sale on a certain day and they receive the cash payment for that transaction at a later time. And a lot of people might hear the term account receivable or account payable. In the cross-border trade space, when you're an exporter in Mexico selling to the US, if you're selling a non-specialized commodity, it's quite a competitive space. What does that mean in simple terms? It basically means people who sell tomatoes or avocados or bell peppers, a lot of people can grow these things. So it's quite a competitive space. It's not a specialty item. It's not like a very rare heirloom of dragon fruit, right? Which can be treated a bit differently. But for the sake of the simplicity of this exercise, we'll leave out specialty goods. So these types of commodities, when they're sold, the buyer on the US side and the supplier will normally come to an agreement on what the net terms will be for that payment. And in most cases in our industry, in the fresh produce industry specifically, the tomatoes will be grown, packed, loaded onto a truck, shipped, they'll make it to the border, they'll cross the border successfully, make it to the buyer's warehouse in the US side. And then when the buyer unpacks a few pallets, takes a few out and says, this is the right color, this is the right quantity, this is the right amount, I love everything about it, they will then say, now we have issued an invoice for these terms. Initially, what is given at the start of the process is simply a purchase order. And there's no guarantee until the goods make it to the warehouse of the buyer. Then the buyer will start to say, hey, here's an invoice for net 30. that buyer on the US side, unless they're the retailer themselves, and in most cases that's not the case, it's normally a distributor, somebody who buys from multiple suppliers in Mexico, has a cold storage facility, and we find this a lot here in the Rio Grande Valley, especially in the northern Upper Valley region. We have a lot of cold storage facilities. These buyers will buy them, and then they will sell to Walmart, H-E-B, Kroger, much larger retailers. And you find in that transaction, there's another net invoice cycle. So maybe this person, the buyer in McAllen, doesn't get paid by the retailer in New York City, as an example, for net 30 or net 60 or net 45. So this person gets paid whenever they get paid by that buyer. And this person likely is not going to be incentivized to pay the supplier until they have their cash flow. So what you just find is it's no one's fault in particular. It's not the exporter, it's not the distributor, it's not the retailer's fault. It's just that it takes a while for customers like you and I to go to the retail store and buy those goods, and for that cash to get realized to the retailer and then to make its way back down. So this problem is called long or unstable cash flow convergence.
How long has that supply chain situation been in place? Is it, when your research, has it always been this way? And you really are disrupting things with your ideas?
So this problem of long cash flow conversion cycles has existed since the Mesopotamian era. This is like trade finance.
No, nothing's as difficult as this one. Cross-border stuff just looks so much more difficult.
But if you even think about it historically, it was. We used to trade amongst nations. And so the issue has always existed. What's interesting about what we're able to do now as a technology company is there's a lot of information and data that we can access to make high certainty decisions on who we should be advancing money towards and providing liquidity to, and who we should not, right? Because it's the job of a prudent lender to make good lending decisions. And so that's essentially what we do. The main service that we started providing was what's called in the industry invoice factoring. In other regions, it can be called invoice trading or invoice or purchasing it at a discount or buying invoices. It goes by many names in different regions. But essentially, that invoice that was traded by the exporter and the first buyer in the US, we have built a platform that enables that exporter to log onto our website and very quickly see those invoices listed out. And we do this because we pull this information from various sources, and one of those being the government databases on the Mexican side of the border. And so we're able to list those out very clearly. They can, within a few clicks, apply for and receive financing on those receivables. And what does that mean? Well, let's put our exporter hat on and look at it from the perspective of the person who has spent the last 120 days growing the tomatoes, another week, making sure it's packed, shipped, and delivered correctly. I haven't seen cash in a while. So I get to log into SupplyPay because I've received my invoice from my distributor and very quickly apply for and receive up to 80% of that total invoice face value.
Was there anything like this before, or it didn't happen because the technology wasn't there?
So there have been businesses that have tried to do this at scale before, but the technology has only recently come into a place where you can do this at scale without scaling hundreds of credit analysts at the same time. Instead of building a massive financial institution, you can build automation processes and invest in really good technology that will enable you to handle, 150 invoices per month, the same way you would handle 1 million invoices per month with the same size of staff. That's what's really exciting about the time we live in. There's a lot of interesting applications of these different tools that we find both in the AI landscape and the machine learning landscape, but also in just the ability to spin up very complex automated workflows with a lot of providers.
So have you done a pilot program or a pilot project where you've selected one grower and said, let's try this? And if so, what's been his or her reaction? at getting paid so much more quickly?
Yeah. So we have worked with a few, and a friend of mine, Jesus, he's actually, he was one of our earliest customers. He's actually coming to McAllen to sell his latest consumer packaged good product. So really cool to just watch him go from, greenhouse growing to being like, hey, how can we take some of these peppers that we're growing and some of these other products and make them into a more, into a better product, into kind of like a spicy chili paste or chili oil of a sort. He has always had great things to say about what this does. It enables them to it enables a business operator to focus on operating their business instead of finding instead of putting their super advanced financial engineering hat on, they just focus on how can I get more product? How can I increase yield? How can I run this business better? Instead of spending, such a large portion of their time trying to do financial engineering with different types of financial providers. Some banks in Mexico will lend, some of them won't, some of them will do factoring, some of them won't. It's very expensive in some cases. So some of the value that we offer to these exporters is like, we are a U.S. institution, right? And we're providing capital in the Mexican interest rate environment. So there's a pretty big benefit that they get from a price perspective there that carries. And that means a lot because it's not the highest margin business, right? So it's been really great, both with Jesus, others like Andres, Daniel, some of our earlier adopters.
Well, so I remember the last time we met and we were talking about this, you were saying if you can crack this, if your company can crack this in the fresh produce industry where everything's perishable and time is really important, it's going to be so much easier when you then branch into other industries where you haven't got to worry about things like that.
Correct.
So the potential for your companies is huge if you can make this bit work.
Correct. And it kind of this is a nice segue into what we've learned as we've been building in the company. So we started off just focused on solving that cash flow issue, which is in and of itself is a very fun problem to tackle. But as we were working with these customers and we were watching some of the other business inefficiencies and pains, we realized that we're not just here to be a lending partner to these companies. We're here to be an indispensable partner as they grow their businesses. So what does that mean? Well, not only are we here to help alleviate some of those cash flow cycles, we also found that in the communication between all of the different stakeholders in a cross-border transaction, it can be fragmented. There can be missed emails. There can be incorrect documents traded. So we kind of went through that example earlier of an exporter and an importer, and we'll just keep it for this leg of the journey here. There can be multiple parties involved in orchestrating a successful load of tomatoes from Mexico to that buyer's warehouse. There are customs brokers involved on both sides of the border. There are customs officials involved on both sides of the border. There's a trucking company involved. In some cases, there's 2 trucking companies involved. That's a lot of moving pieces, right? And these companies, the buyer and the seller, they have their different sub-departments, right? So not only are you communicating between 2 companies, but it's multiple departments in those companies communicating to orchestrate, hey, I need this many tomatoes, or I need this many boxes or this many pallets of tomatoes. I need them at this price and I need it delivered by this day, right? Then those parties are communicating with their customs brokers to make sure everything is going to be cleared correctly. Because in the case of fresh produce, it's very important that once those things are on the truck, they get as quickly as they can to the warehouse, right? Because you don't want to reduce quality. Like it's much more stable when it's in that warehouse and when it's on its way to its final destination. That's how consumers like us get to have fresh produce. So in that analysis of all of those stakeholders and all of that communication, we've had an incredible team internally build out what we call our supply link product. And that is truly just an all-in-one order orchestration platform that brings together all of those different parties involved in a cross-border transaction and helps them to make sure that their documents, their data, and their information is being communicated as efficiently and effectively as possible, so that there are no errors at the port, there are no errors at crossing, that the truck driver and where the load is and how it's what the progress of that load reaching its final destination is communicated to the entire supply chain. So we're really excited about that, because this tool is proving to be very useful to a lot of these early adopters. And what it does is it enables us, one day to move closer and closer toward a fully streamlined supply chain. And that really is like the long-term vision for our organization.
And like we said earlier, you couldn't have envisaged doing something like this even 5 years ago. Yeah. The technology just was not there.
Correct. And it's quite incredible to watch some of my team and how they apply some of these newer large language models and computer vision and OCR technologies to these various documents you find in cross-border trade. So they're able to read bills of lading, manifests, warehouse receipts, all of these documents you find in a cross-border transaction. They're able to read it and suggest when there might be errors, right, or clarify things for teams. And the less errors there are, fundamentally, the less taxpayer dollars we're going to be spending, because there's going to be less trucks spending. There'll be less time spent by each truck at the port, which will increase port efficiency.
I can only think of those growers, those independent, family-operated growers in Mexico that have never had this opportunity before. They've never had someone come in and say, "This is how we can help," and for them to think they could get paid so much more quickly. I can just see their faces. That's the bit that fascinates me about the success of the project. And that could be close.
Yeah, we're already seeing a lot of great value for those customers. It's exciting.
So in order to scale this, you need funding. Can I ask, how have you been getting on in that sphere when you're looking for probably some big bucks to pull this off and make this everything it could be? How have you been doing?
Correct. Yeah, that was for a long time our biggest bottleneck in growth. So when you're first trying to build something that others see as risky, but you quite see, you're very calculated and you know that it's not that risky, you have to prove it with some of your own money. So at the very beginning, we just did a small friends and family round of funding. So people that just kind of knew us for our reputation and were willing to throw some money into a pot and consider it gone for the sake of their sanity. We were able to turn that around $250,000, $350,000 every month for several months. And that built up our first roughly $2.5 million of loan tape. We did that in our first year. We financed around $2.5 million in trade. Since then, you continue to go out, you've proven the model, you have a little bit more data, you're able to convince more institutional investments to get involved. So then we raised our kind of pre-seed round of equity financing. We were targeting $1 million. We ended up having an oversubscription of around $2.1 million. So we found really strategic partners at different parts of the border and in different industries with connections that we think could really be useful as the company grows. And so, as an example, last month, or the month before last, in April, we financed our first $1 million month of financing. We're on track to grow. We've been negotiating with our potential lenders. So I don't want to jump into too much financial nuance here, but we've been negotiating with lenders to get larger facilities, and I'll have exciting news on that here in the next couple of weeks that I'll share with you.
We're looking forward to that. We're obviously wishing you all the best, because it's an incredible story. And so when you keep going up the ladder and you're looking for more money, do you get surprised that you knew, like you say, for you it wasn't a risk, you thought this through, it can work, it's going to work, but these people have never heard of you and never heard of the program and what you're trying to do. So has it been taking you aback every time you get to another stage and thinking, wow, we pulled it off?
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Every step, people that were very hesitant to see the vision clearly as we continue to hit more and more milestones are just kind of convinced by that body of evidence through time. So, I mean, that's the best way to convince any type of investor or institution. It's like, hey, we talked, instead of saying, hey, we talked last week and here's all these exciting changes, like do that for months, maybe a year and a half, right? And then you can have like a much larger body of evidence to talk to someone from. And it makes for a much better time.
Well, my last question on this for you on this company was going to be, where do you see yourselves in 1 year, 5 year, and 10 years?
Yeah, that's really exciting. What's really exciting about the company right now is that we're growing at a venture rate, right? And what does that mean? As we continue to ramp up, we believe we can do before the end of this year roughly $10 million a month in financing, right? That is, in a month, what we did in our first year times 5, right? And we did that, we'll be able to grow that in a year. Our goal is by 2030 to finance more than 1 million cross-border transactions per month and reduce the number of errors at port crossings in North America, this is Mexico, United States, and Canada, to less than 1%. So that's like our really big kind of, we call it a hairy, audacious goal. And that's what we want to target, and I believe we're on target.
And you must have thought of this. You're quite happy to be saying this publicly and not fear that someone else is going to watch this and say, we've got to beat them to that.
It's very difficult. Good luck.
You're very confident.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. And if you think that you can do it, come have an open conversation with me. I'd love for you to maybe join our team instead.
There you go. Well, those are all the questions I had for this, because I think, like you say, every week, every month, you're making new breakthroughs and streamlining the process even more. So we love to come back and talk to you again like that. But so my last question was simply going to be, I know you gave a plug to your wife's business earlier, but let's do that again, because people have got to come and taste the incredible food that she and her mother produce.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's right off of North Westgate, Lea House. It's a Vietnamese kitchen. It's absolutely delicious. I eat there when I'm in town, probably like every single day, multiple times a day in some cases. It's delicious. We serve pho, fried rice, spring rolls, egg rolls, and, lemonade made fresh. Well, it's not lemons, it's limeade, made fresh every single day. It's really good. Yeah, come by, stop by. My family would love to serve you.
Thank you so much, William. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed chatting to you about this, fascinated by your company and what you're doing. An incredible task, but it's great to hear that you're doing well, and it looks as though you're going to make it, and I'm sure you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anyone is listening to this and they're interested, if you are in the fresh produce industry or you know anyone, just reach out to me directly. Like, we can put my email in this. That's totally fine. It's just my name at supplypay.io.
We'll spell your name.
Yeah, William, William. Reach out to us if you're in the fresh produce industry, or in general, if you're in cross-border trade. We would love to talk with you, love to find out how we can help. And if you're interested in maybe working at a technology company and you're in the Valley and you have the skills, we're looking for more people. So these are two ways as a community we can continue to grow within McAllen, within Brownsville, within Weslaco. And I'm really excited for next time.
Thank you so much. We have learned a lot. Yeah. Cheers, mate.
Thank you.